Welcome back to Work Life Harmony. I have an amazing woman here today. I went big today, brought in the big guns. I have an actual doctor here with us today to talk about a topic. If you are a mom, listen up because we're going to be tackling all things mom guilt. So, Michelle, I will let you introduce yourself, share your background, and then we will jump right in.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me, Megan. I adore you and all the things that you do, and I appreciate you calling me a real doctor. So, I'm a psychologist, and I'm a mom to a 3.5 year old little boy who has a ton of energy, and I have none of it.
Wait, a three and
Um,
a half boy with energy.
yeah,
Imagine
right.
that.
I know. Can you imagine that? Yeah. Who doesn't want to take a nap at preschool, and they are like, why doesn't he want to take a nap? I'm like, because he's 3.5 and he's
Yeah.
nosy and wants
And
to do
he's done
things.
with
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. So I am a psychologist. I have a therapy practice for moms who live in New York State, where I live. And I also provide coaching for moms. And, when I talk about the moms that I work with, these are moms, just probably like everybody who is listening, like all the moms that you work with, Megan. These are just regular moms trying to manage it all.
Yeah.
And that is something that I make a point to say all the time. Is actually something that I talked about in a Forbes article I was in recently, because moms always think, well, it's only me, right? Or I don't
Mhm.
need help, or all the things that we think. And the truth is that we all need help, and we all are just trying to manage all the things. So that's what I do in my therapy practice. And then my coaching practice is called Mental Wellness Mamas. And I have a group coaching program there and some mini courses. And basically, what I do is I help moms manage all the emotions of mom life, things like guilt and
It's not emotional.
no, it's not emotional at all, right? Things like guilt and frustration and overwhelm, all of those things, to help them be more connected to their kids and happier with their families.
Oh, it's so powerful. So Michelle and I met because Michelle and I are in the same mastermind group. And I always feel like at the end of any call that we're both on, that I just need to be like, hey, Michelle, just shoot me an invoice. All right. Because I feel like through our mastermind and just hearing you, share behind the scenes of your business and just knowing you more and more, how many times have I said to you during a call, like, oh my God, where were you 8 years ago when I
Yeah,
was in the
yeah,
trenches of
yeah,
toddlerhood?
yeah,
And I
yeah.
have learned so much
Mm.
from you and having you in my life. And I've attended some of your webinars as well.
Mhm.
And this is why I was like, okay, I need to bring you on the podcast because, first of all, mom guilt's real. I don't think I know any mom out there. And I'm sorry. And
Yeah.
if you are a mom that says I've never battled mom guilt, I'm going to call BS on you a little bit.
Yeah, total.
But for me, where I still struggle with it is down to this constant time management game, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
every single day we have to make choices on what we're spending our time on.
Mhm,
And I
mhm,
know when Grace was first born and I was, still full-time corporate,
mhm.
every single minute I was working, I was feeling guilty
Yeah,
because I'm like, am I being the mom I should be? I'm not with her. But then when I was with her, then I was feeling guilty about, am
yeah,
I being the employee? Am I showing up there? And
right.
now it's just transitioned more into my business and time for myself. Like
Mhm.
I still battle, I prioritize. I'm starting to hate the word self care, but I prioritize time for me.
Yeah,
But there are still that underlying guilt for it
yeah.
every single time I do it. So I'd love for you to kind of share just what's going on there and some tips for people that are battling this guilt over the choices we're making with our time.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, 100% agree with what you said, that if a mom says that she is not struggling with mom guilt, she's either lying, or she just maybe doesn't have that kind of self-awareness to know what it is all about. So a definition of, I think, will be helpful first, because we all hear the term mom guilt, but what does that actually mean?
Mhm.
So basically, mom guilt is this never-ending cycle of not doing enough and not being good enough. It's that second guessing, kind of questioning feeling, exactly what you were just talking about, right? When you are, at work, you're thinking about what you're not doing as a mom. When you're a mom, you're thinking about what you're not doing at work. So it's that really kind of second guessing, questioning feeling, this feeling of never quite being good enough. You always need to be doing more and more and more. It's that self-doubt, it's that not living up to expectations and then that feeling of failure. And
Check, check,
yes,
check.
check
Had them all.
D, all of the above, right?
Yep.
And something that I, will say to moms is, we were saying before about if a mom says she's not struggling with mom guilt, how do you know that you have mom guilt? You're a mom, so you have mom guilt. Like there's no other, there's no that like you have passed the test. If you are a mom, if you check that box, then you have mom guilt because there's always something to feel guilty about, right?
And
Maybe
what am I feeding them? I mean, that's a
exactly.
huge one
Yes,
for me.
yes.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe for you, when you were in the corporate space, it was more of that kind of work or being home type of thing. Then there's the feeding stuff. There's, oh my God, screen time. That's a huge one. Not being present, right? Always being kind of, or being on your phone or doing something else, or not being a constant source of entertainment to your kids.
And one came up yesterday with
Yeah.
someone in my program right now. And I was so grateful she brought it up on our call because everyone else was able to be like, heck no, do it. And she was, having to validate, okay, well, the kids are going to be back in person school. And she works, so she's a lawyer and she's got a nanny at home for the two young ones for her work hours. She's like, well, I still think I may have, we won't need the nanny anymore, but I'm thinking maybe just twice a week I'll have them pick them up from school, and was like struggling with feeling guilty over it. I was like, do it. Do it every day if you can. Like, give yourself, you don't need to be doing drop off and pick up, but the guilt was there,
Yeah. And so that kind of brings me to, because I think this really ties really nicely into the whole idea of the time guilt piece of things when you're a mom, is that we really have this skewed notion of what our definition of what a good mom is, right? So for her, part of sort of the story that she has told herself is that a good mom does drop off or pick up, right? That's part of her idea of, and this is not just this mom, right? This is all moms. And it's not just an internal thing. This is a lot of messages that we get from society, because what does society say? That the definition of being a good mom is essentially being a martyr, right? It's being this person who sacrifices it all, who your entire life is engrossed in being a mother. And while your kids can certainly be the center of your world in terms of love, they don't literally have to be the center of your world all day every day. Actually, psychologically speaking, that's not healthy for kid and that's not healthy for mom.
Why do you think this isn't being talked about more? Like, why do you think there's still this pressure when we know, I mean, every mom I know that finally is open and honest,
Right.
regardless of what their life looks like, whether they work outside the home, inside the home, full time with their kids, whatever it looks like, at the heart of it, they'll eventually open up and be like, yeah, I'm struggling with this,
Right.
oh, I feel like, where do you think that pressure is coming from? And why is it still out there if we're all feeling this?
Yeah. So I think so there's two things. The first is that, and this is probably a universal human struggle, but it probably comes out a little bit more with moms, is that there is a big difference between knowing something logically and accepting something emotionally, right? So we can logically say, well, we all have this issue and we all get it, and that we shouldn't put pressure on moms, and that we, shouldn't have these crazy expectations, all of those things. But the logic is only going to take you so far. If you don't have the emotional acceptance of whatever it is that you're struggling with, in this case, the mom guilt or the time mom guilt, the emotion stuff, that's the secret sauce, right? Because we're all smart, right? We are all smart. We're all successful. We're all doing all the things. But if we don't deal with our emotions, we're going to be stuck in this kind of like hamster wheel cycle of things over and over and over. So that feels like to me that, and especially as a psychologist, and that's really what I do in my group coaching program, is I focus on the emotional processing, because you guys are smart, the logic stuff, you just need guidance through the emotions. So that feels like the first piece. And then the second piece is that I really think, we are just starting to talk about these things, right? Even though it is something that it's now like much more common and all of that, a generation ago, this was not conversation, right? And it may not have been conversation because there were different expectations at that point, or kind of like that whole feminist message of the 70s of you can do it all has now transferred to you should do it
Have to
all,
do
or
it
you
all.
have to do it
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's also kind of, the time period that we're in, that this is going to take some time
Interesting.
to kind of, absorb into mainstream society.
How much do you think social media is playing in on this?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that you brought that up. I think, and this is probably a reason why a generation ago there wasn't as much of this, right? Because there was no Google and there was no social media, right? So,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you had to parent your child without seeing what other people were doing. And then you had to parent your child without being able to Google random things that happen, right? You just had to kind of figure it out. I was literally having this conversation the other night with my husband. So my husband grew up in a very, very rural part of Guatemala, and he was telling me about how, like, his
I
mom
didn't know that.
just, yeah. So his mom would just basically say, like, go play outside, be home for dinner, right? Which is
That's
what
kind of what we
my
did all summer.
right,
Yeah.
right, which is what I did too. But even, just like more things about how, like, he didn't really have a lot of toys. It was like, go play with, like, the chicken that's running around on the farm, right? Just figure it out, right?
Right.
Um, and so my point in saying about the social media stuff, right, is that there was no comparison. What is this mom doing? What is that mom doing? Because if you think about it, a lot of times when we feel those pangs of guilt, it's a lot of times triggered by something else that we see, right? It's not until our kid says, mommy, put your phone down, right? Or it's not until we see that other mom with the picture perfect Pinterest craft that we start to feel some of these things. And sometimes it's the case that it just kind of comes up, but a lot of it has to do with social media. And I talk to a lot of moms that I work with about figuring out what things on social media kind of trigger guilt and different emotions in you, and making
Interesting.
plans around how you're going to navigate that, right? Because if you just
Yeah.
keep consuming, 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 it's going to be difficult to manage the emotions.
I have to think there's a reason why a couple key social media accounts I can think of that are like viral
Yeah.
are the ones that are their moms kind of showing themselves as like real,
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
reason why they have the following they have.
Right.
Like
Right.
we're craving some validation of I'm not the only one
Yeah.
who had a day that
Absolutely.
looks like this
Yeah,
a little bit.
absolutely. And those accounts, interesting enough, I like to see those accounts that sometimes you'll see an account that has a picture perfect image, but then in the caption, they will say, like, oh, but it took 10 takes to get this perfect picture, right? As
Yep.
opposed to the images where it's like, no, this is the real deal of what's going on, because there's still that comparison feeling when you see that image.
Yeah. And I think it's funny as soon as you're talking about comparison, and this was pre-social media wave. I don't know why it's funny, this moment has been popping up in my head a lot lately, but I can remember so vividly this day, and Grace was, I mean, probably less than 6 months,
Mm.
right around the 6-month mark. And I had planned to meet my sister at the mall, and I was taking kind of some flex time at work to go do some Christmas shopping. And of course, tried to schedule it around her nap time so
Of
maybe I could,
course.
bubble her in the stroller,
Yeah.
all the
All the things.
logisticals
Yeah.
because I was extra with that, with her anxieties, my anxieties, all of that.
Yeah.
And we finally get there, and of course, I'm nervous because she's
Hmm.
uh, very sensory oriented, and so I'm like,
Yeah.
"Is it gonna be too loud? Is it whatever?" And we're sitting there, of course, outside of Aunt Annie's because if you go to the mall,
Mhm.
you gotta get the hot pretzel.
Yeah, or Cinnabon, either one.
Yeah, yeah, we don't have that one, so therefore there.
Okay.
And now my sister is a mom of 3,
Mhm.
and, her ex-husband was in the police department, and so, I mean, she was doing all the things for all the kids.
Yeah.
And we were sitting there and, I was still battling corporate work and, so
Mhm.
2 very different lives. And I remember she looks at me and I broke down and I started crying because
Mhm.
there was this, I was sharing about, I missed this moment that I didn't want to miss with Grace that the nanny got that I didn't. And she looked stunned and she looked over at me and she's like, "God, I never thought about that. All I've been doing is sitting here thinking how lucky you were
Mm.
to have this life of the job and the nanny. And yet
Mm.
all I was doing was thinking how lucky she was
Yeah, yeah.
to not have the same time struggle I had, but she had her
Mhm.
own." I was like, "God, if we could just all be more
Yeah.
honest with each other about what our struggles were, because
Mhm.
we're also busy, I think, thinking the grass is always greener."
Yeah, and the
Right.
struggle is essentially the same.
Yeah.
right? It's like at its core, it's literally the same. It just looks different or it comes out in a different way. And, to your point there, I think a lot of times there is that comparison, grass is always greener. And something that I can share with everybody, research based around that, is that they have done research on, what fares better psychologically for a child, being a working mom, being a stay-at-home mom. And the answer is it doesn't matter.
Both. Yeah, I
Both. Yeah.
bet.
The
Good.
answer is it literally does, like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What will fare best for your child psychologically is if you are providing a stable, loving environment for them, and that it, like, literally, I'm talking about like literal bare minimum stable, loving environments. It's not like you
Right.
are, the cruise director or the entertainment director doing all of the things. It literally is providing them, taking care of their needs, providing them with love and support and understanding, and setting boundaries and
Yeah.
consequences and all the things that they need. But any mom that is listening can know that, the research has shown either one is okay. It's
I love that.
yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah,
So, for
absolutely.
any moms out there that are having still the time
Yeah,
guilt,
yeah,
are there any quickies that you can give them to help
yes,
them start kind of moving through that?
yes. So I have three kind of main things that I like to tell my mom clients around all this stuff.
Okay.
So the first is that you need to really take a look at your definition of what a good mom is, right?
Mhm.
Because for many years, and I like to kind of think of these kinds of thoughts as sort of junk drawer thoughts, right? What do we keep in a junk drawer? A bunch of crap that we don't know if we really need, right? But we might need it one day, or maybe we did need it, 10 years ago. Maybe the reason why we have 12 Allen wrenches in our junk drawer is because we used to be a college student with IKEA
With
furniture,
IKEA, I was
right?
gonna say
Yeah.
IKEA.
Yeah,
Just Allen
IKEA
wrenches,
equals
yeah.
Allen wrenches. But we are now adults that purchase furniture in a store that then delivers it to our home, and Allen wrenches are no longer useful, right?
Yep.
So my point in that is that thoughts are very much like that. We have thoughts that we have been holding on to for a very long time, but we don't know what to do with them, or they were useful at one point, or maybe they were never useful, right? But we still have them. Maybe we have them because of things that we have grown up with, or things that we have seen, or whatever the case is. So my first tip is to really get a good definition, and a definition for you, right? Because it's going to look different for every single mom,
Right.
of what is important to you, what are the things that you value, and then looking at this sort of junk drawer of thoughts that you have, and really thinking, well, do I still need to think that being a good mom means that I do drop off or pick up every day? Or does it, what for me, what maybe being a good mom means is that, when my son comes home from school, that I take literally 5 minutes as soon as he comes home from school to talk to him, ask him how his day was, read him a
Yeah.
book. I mean, just 5 minutes of that. So really to be very clear about what your definition of a good mom is, not the definition that you've seen on social media, or that maybe was your own mom's definition or society's definition,
Yeah.
or any of those things.
I've
So I think
never really
that's,
thought about that.
yeah,
And as you say that, I'm like, and it changes. Like
it
things that were really important to
changes,
me
right?
a couple years ago, they've shifted now.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to kind of check in, just like you talk about kind of doing like a 90-day check-in with your goals. You need to be checking in with, what is this definition of being a good mom? And that likely changes as you move through stages in life, and as your child moves through
Yeah.
stages in life, right? Because it's different at certain points.
Yep.
So the second thing is to really look at what your sort of definition around self-worth is, right? So
Mm.
a lot of times moms have this notion that, time and productivity and efficiency defines their self-worth, right? It's this idea that if we are
100%.
productive, then we are good. Or I literally just made a reel about this yesterday, where the idea that, like, the minute that a mom gets a second to relax, they start shoulding on themselves. They start having the shoulds. I
Yep.
should be folding the laundry. I should be cleaning the junk drawer. I should be cooking. I should, right? And
Yep.
it's really based on that idea that our self-worth and who we are as a person is based on time and productivity and efficiency. So I think that's something that we really kind of break down in the group coaching program, and that kind of ties into, the definition of being a good mom, is really looking at that and saying, well, actually, what are all the other amazing things that I can offer that has nothing to do with time and productivity and all of that stuff.
We must have been in each other's heads yesterday, because yesterday I did the real "I'm busy is not productive." Right?
Yes,
Like, you
yes, yes,
can take a break and
exactly.
be productive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that I would say for moms who are struggling with this, time piece of things, is to really think about and implement ways that you are essentially taking what that definition of a good mom is, and that you are living that, and shifting that mindset from it's about, it psychologically speaking, it really is not about um, quantity, it's about quality. And so I always say this example to moms. So, maybe if you have like a memory from when you were a child, like, I don't know, baking Christmas cookies or something like that, something that was like a tradition or something that you did with your mom
I
that
can
when you,
see it
yeah,
right
right.
now. Like, that was
When
our
you think
thing.
back,
Yep,
right?
totally.
So at the end of the day, it didn't matter if you baked those cookies for 5 minutes or for 5 hours. It
Yep.
just mattered that, and this is actually how memory is processed in the brain, is when you have an emotional experience, positive, negative, whatever the case is, that's how your brain forms a memory. And so you
Mm.
likely, it wasn't about baking the cookies, right? You could have been like coloring dirt or something, like
Yeah.
whatever,
It's
right?
certain like conversations and
Yeah.
laughter and things like that that
Yes.
I hear
That
in my
you
head.
that you have that memory. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the connection. Those are the things that when your child grows up and they say like, what was your mom like? They'll say things like, oh, we had this tradition of baking Christmas cookies. It's not about the cookies, it's not about the time. It's about the connection and the positive emotional experience that they had during that time. So instead of like the mom that you were talking about from yesterday, right, in your group, her idea was that, oh well, I have to be a good mom means I do, pick up X number of days a week or whatever the case is. But she may hate pickup and be annoyed that she has to do pickup, right? So if she can delegate some of the stuff like that, that honestly doesn't really matter, right? Because if a kid has the memory of like, oh, my mom picked me up from school every day, they're not remembering you literally picking them up. They're remembering your smiling face, your hug, your embrace, the emotional experience of what that was like, right? So if she doesn't want to do that and she's going to be miserable doing that, it would better serve her to have somebody else pick up the child or have the nanny stay or whatever it needs to happen. And then when she does see her child, to have 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever amount of time of like, let's just sit down together, put the phones away, let's talk about your day at school,
Yeah.
what fun thing do you want to do on the weekend? That's going to be the emotional experience that they're going to remember much more. It's going to be ingrained like much more in their brain.
Oh, that's so helpful. I mean, I'm even thinking just the other weekend, um, Grace is starting to want to get comfortable in the kitchen. She's always been very scared to be in there. And so we went strawberry picking and then made a fresh strawberry pie because it doesn't require the oven or anything.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
takes like 8 minutes to do this
yeah,
pie.
yeah,
She is still talking about that.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
it was 8 minutes,
yeah,
but we
exactly.
had fun. We had the music going, we were laughing, and now I'm realizing that's why she's talking about it.
Exactly.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
8 minutes of it, but it was the emotion and the
exactly.
energy that was going on there.
Yeah. So really just keeping that mantra in mind that it's about the quality, not the quantity of the interaction.
That is so good. Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Yes.
Now, I want to ask you something that you didn't know I was going to ask you because I've
Okay.
been dying to know. So, our listeners don't know this yet, but your background prior
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Everybody loves
was
this. Okay.
being a psychologist with NYPD, right?
Yes, yes.
How
Yeah,
did you shift from working with NYPD
yeah.
to moms?
Okay. So I'll tell you just a quick funny thing about the NYPD job because everybody's always dying to know what it was about. So everybody thinks that when I say I was a
Hey, I watched Law
psychologist,
and Order. I know what
yeah,
goes on.
no, exactly. So I was literally just about to say that. Everybody thinks when I say to them, oh, I was a psychologist at the NYPD, that they think that I'm Dr. Wong
Yeah.
from like Law and Order SVU, right? Those people don't exist. They might work for the FBI or the CIA or whatever, but that's not what a police department psychologist does. So in a major police department like the NYPD, there are two kind of groups of psychologists. There are the psychologists who help hire police candidates, and then there
Right.
are psychologists who, once you become a police officer, if you're having issues,
Right.
you then go there, right? So my job was for the candidates. So
Okay.
essentially, what we would do is that we would do psychological evaluations on people who wanted to be police officers. And we would say whether they were appropriate psychologically, because, obviously you're giving somebody a
Yeah.
gun, right? So they
Yeah.
need to be psychologically what we call suitable to be a police officer. So just to give you kind of a sense of what that job was like, in order for us to get a class of 10,000, sorry, in order for us to get a class of 1,000 police officers, we would have to screen psychologically 10,000 people. So we would
Wow.
deny 9,000 to get 1,000. And the stories that I have, like the people that would
Oh, I
show
can't
up at
even
my door, I
imagine.
mean, literally there was a time where I, go out to get my person to come into my office to do the evaluation, and I looked down, and the minute that I looked up, I was like, he has a huge black eye. Like he's shown up to this essentially job interview, right, with like a
Black
black
eye.
eye that I've never seen one that big before. And so when I ask him about it, he tells me this whole story about how he literally got into a bar fight a couple of days before and was arrested by the NYPD, and now still thought it was a good idea to show up like he was then, like I guess out on
Owning
bail
it.
or whatever, right? And he just showed up and like told me all about this, and then went on to tell me about how he got into a fight with a cop, and just like the craziest
Ah,
types of stories. So anyway, people just love hearing that stuff. So I thought I would share how I made that shift. So that was probably the funniest job that I've ever had. My coworkers there were amazing. I still talk to many of them till this day, and I haven't worked there since my son was born. But it was the whole concept of work-life harmony.
yeah.
So where I live in the suburbs of New York City, the commute each way, so I had a round trip total commute of 3 hours a day
Oh,
to get to work. And then there are times where there are mandatory overtime periods. The
yep.
NYPD is it's a paramilitary organization. There's no such thing as working from home or flex time. None of that. It doesn't
Right.
exist. Um, so I basically made the choice to not live like that anymore, right? And to get back some of this time freedom that all moms are looking for. And also, since I didn't want that commute and I wanted some of this time freedom, I started looking for a job closer to home, and the only job that I could find was in a prison. And I've worked in a prison before, and it's funny. Like there's a lot of funny things that happen, a lot of entertaining stories that I have. But it is also extremely sad and depressing, and that's
I
the
can't even
last
imagine.
place that I wanted to be. So
Yeah.
I kind of had to make a job for myself at the end of the day.
That's so powerful though. And what I love about, and everybody, if you are a mom, and I'll put all the links in the show notes, you need to follow Michelle, especially on Instagram, because what I love about everything that you bring to the table is you're bringing all of this wealth of knowledge, being a psychologist and having all of this background. So you're bringing real pragmatic things that work and help, but you are also sharing so openly
Yeah.
your own, mom life realities as
Yeah.
being a mom, that
Yeah.
you are just so approachable, that I love following everything that you do, because it makes me laugh, it makes me smile, I feel validated, but
Yeah.
then I'm also learning something as I
Yeah.
go. And I
Oh,
think you have done such a beautiful job of that. I will share with you guys, inside of our mastermind calls, Michelle is one of the few that also gets labeled as occasionally being a troublemaker. I'm kind of on the outskirts of the troublemakers. I kind of
yeah.
aspire to be one, but just because of the realness, the honesty, all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you. And again, I have to get over this saying, I wish I just found you 8 or 9 years
Oh,
ago, but instead I'm grateful I have you now,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
you help me so much all the time. So thank
Oh,
you.
well, I appreciate that more than you know, Megan. I appreciate you appreciating the realness. This is who I am. And, it has been a journey to kind of put myself out there. And the more and more that I see that this is what moms are looking for and what they need. And honestly, this is part of your question before about kind of like breaking down some of the societal stigmas, right? Is
Yep.
when people are willing to be vulnerable and are willing to be genuine and honest and say what is literally going on, as opposed to, because that is like a mom struggle, right? The whole
Yep.
facade of like, I have it all together, but inside I'm struggling or I'm crumbling. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I am, what Megan is trying to say is being labeled as a troublemaker is that I have a terrible potty mouth. And, but it is what it is, right? This is just who I am. And,
But it's real. And
yeah,
that's what's
exactly.
so great.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for everybody listening, I've mentioned Instagram. Where
Yeah.
is the best place for them to connect with you, get info on any upcoming
Yeah.
programs you've got,
So
et cetera?
I am most active on Instagram. I'm at Mental Wellness for Mamas, MAMAS. And over there, you can get resources. I have a awesome download all about when you eventually do lose your patience with your kids, right? When they keep
It's a
asking
good
over
one.
and over and over. That the 6 things that you need to be doing after, because
Yep.
it's less important that you deal with that. Sorry, let me rephrase. It's okay that you lose your patience with your kids. What you need to do is once you lose your patience, there are some things that you need to do after the fact to ensure that they're okay psychologically, all of that. It's actually a good thing to lose your patience because you show them that you are human
Human. Yeah.
and that they don't have to be perfect, that you are not perfect. And then the 6 things essentially teach them what you need to do, or teach you what you need to do after the fact.
That has been
So
a huge help for me
yeah.
because
Oh,
I
awesome.
share often patience is what I am working on. I'm aspiring to be more patient. And so
Yeah.
having that as my, I lost it,
Yep.
has really
Yep.
been good. And I
Yep.
notice Grace appreciates it
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
lot.
Awesome. I
So
love
thank
it.
you.
Okay. So yeah, so check me out on there, and you can always send me a DM or reach out, and I'm happy to talk to all the moms that wanna listen. And if anybody is particularly struggling with mom guilt, if anybody's on the Peanut app, they have something called Pods, which is essentially like Clubhouse for moms.
Yep.
And so every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern time, I host a pod. I answer questions. I give out information, and it's awesome because it's a really supportive environment, and that's really important to have that no judgment.
And I'll grab some info on that Peanut app from you and
Okay.
share that in the show notes as
Okay.
well, because I know
Perfect.
it's pretty new and a lot
Yep.
of moms might really be interested in checking it out.
Yeah, for
So I'll make
sure.
sure I have
Okay.
that too.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Megan.
it.
Thanks.